Breaking news on CBS Sports HQ, the brand new AP Top 25 college football poll is out. We got some newcomers here to the top 10. Some people at the office will be very happy to see Florida State up 4 spots into the top 10. A fantastic start to the season for them. Georgia moving down a few spots despite winning. But taking a look here now at 11 through 20, and you see a brand new member of the top 25, South Florida. After taking down Florida, they are number 18 in the country, and Utah continues to move up. Oklahoma, of course, with a big win over Michigan, up 5 spots, and then your final 5 teams. 2 new unranked into the top 25. We've got Auburn and Mizzou at number 25 after a border showdown victory against Kansas. Everybody was sleeping on week 2, saying we didn't have good enough matchups, and that's when all of the fun teams get taken down. We get some upsets, and so to talk through some of these upsets and what it means as far as the AP poll, we have Brad Crawford and Damien Harris here. Let's start with the Florida upset. The Gators, they were top 15. Now they are out of the poll. So, Brad, how should we look at this team now in the grand scheme of things?
It's a team that's challenging for the Citrus Bowl, no longer a college football playoff entry. That was fool's gold that we saw last season down the stretch when DJ Lagway played well, beat Ole Miss, beat LSU. Then they beat Tulane in the bowl game and sort of kick-started that top 15 billing to enter the season. But, man, after last night's loss to USF where they got bullied at the line of scrimmage, a couple questionable coaching decisions late from Billy Napier, I just have problems with this team. And considering what the Gators have left on that schedule, like 7 games against top 15 competition, including next week against LSU and Texas later, and Florida's a team that is likely going to finish 6-6, 7-5 range if they get it corrected.
Yeah, and Brad, I want to make a point because going into this season, the top 15 ranking, the hype, the expectation that Florida had, I don't necessarily think that it was unwarranted. I think the way that Florida finished the season last year, especially without DJ Lagway, then you get a healthy version of him coming into 2025. I think the hype was warranted, but I think Florida started to feel themselves just a little bit too much. I think the high that they were riding on to end the season, it might have distracted them from the upcoming challenges that they're going to face this season in terms of offseason preparation. And going into this game, I mean, I expected this to be an easier game from Florida, especially considering the schedule that they have. But when you have letdown games like this, that this shows the leaks and the creaks in the foundation that Billy Napier and Florida still have, even though they did finish the season on a high note last year. There's still those fundamental problems there. And Brad, to your point, if they don't clean this up, if they don't get it corrected, this is an unforgiving schedule and an unforgiving path they're going down this season. And they're staring straight down the barrel. And if they don't get it corrected, it's going to be a very, very long season for them. And they're going to be even further away from that championship mentality that they're trying to get.
Yeah, their next 3 games are against top 10 opponents. But we have to talk about the winners of that game last night. The Bulls, Alex Golesh pulling off back-to-back ranked victories to start this season. Of course, we're thinking playoffs now, potentially as the G5 representative, but apparently there's this thing called the Big 3 here in Florida, and you see Miami and Florida State in the top 10. Who should we put as that 3rd team now, Dame?
Well, listen, there's still a lot of football left to be played. Listen, I'm not gonna jump it early here, but I am very proud of the way USF came out because, listen, schools like UCF, USF, some of these smaller schools that aren't Florida, Florida State, Miami, they're seen as the little brother, and they're usually seen as the schools that get the guys that don't commit to Florida State, that don't end up in Gainesville. Well, they're tired of that. That narrative is so tired, it's so played out, and I don't want to bring Alabama into it, but I'm gonna use it just as a talking point here, because whenever you see these teams like Alabama that start to fall and start to, build this big momentum, and you have this target on your back, and you've got all these other teams that you call your little brother and you put your arm on their shoulder, well, eventually they get tired of that and they want to punch you in the mouth. They want to show these guys from USF that I'm talking about, they want to prove that they should have gotten scholarships to the Swamp. They should have been on official visits to Florida State. They should be guys that should be receivers that are being thrown to by Carson Beck at Miami, but they were overlooked. So having a point to prove going into each and every season, I love the battle of the state, whether it's Miami, USF, UCF, Florida. I just love the competitive nature, and I love to see these smaller schools, a USF, really starting to knock off all these big teams, the biggest premier programs in the state.
Yeah, we talked last month, Emily, that USF coming into this season with 3 straight games against top 25 teams, all they had to do was go 2-1 over that 3-game stretch to be in the G5 driver's seat. Well, shockingly, they're 2-0 with a game to play against Miami. So regardless of what happens next week in Coral Gables as a 3-touchdown underdog, I think South Florida has an excellent shot at getting to the playoff now in Alex Golesh's 3rd season. And if you remember, this was a team that coming into the season last fall, a lot of us thought could be that G5 rep with Byron Brown at quarterback, but they could not remain injury-free. Got banged up early against Alabama, lost to Miami as well. Now they're fully healthy. So the Bulls are a team that should run through the American without much issue, regardless of what happens against Miami in next Saturday's game.
Yeah, they hung with Alabama last year. We thought this was going to be a scary team just a year later than we all expected. But you talk about state pride. Yeah, that next game is against Miami. So you managed to take down Florida and Miami. Yeah, we got to have that conversation. Meanwhile, Arizona State upset on the road against Mississippi State. They are no longer in the AP Top 25. This was a very popular upset pick, I feel like, going into this game, especially once we saw those cowbells at practice. But now that it has officially happened, Brad, what concerns you about the Big 12 champ?
Yeah, this team really is missing the short yardage production that Cam Scatterbo delivered last season. We saw late in the game last night in Starkville, Kenny Dillingham deciding to kick a field goal on 4th and 1 rather than give it to one of his, powerful backs. They don't have that guy right now, and if they do, maybe he's on the roster somewhere, but they haven't found him. This was a true road test for Arizona State against one of the SEC's bottom dwellers. Now Jeff Levy has a signature win. I did pick the Bulldogs in this game going back to July. I thought it was a ripe for upset, so I wasn't all that surprised. But Arizona State, to me, looks like an 8-win team, and it's not a squad that's going to challenge for another playoff berth. Certainly probably not going to get back to the Big 12 championship game.
Brad, you're absolutely right. The element of the run game that Cam Scatterbo brought last year to Arizona State is definitely missing. And seeing what he's doing for the Giants right now, they could have used some of that yesterday. But here's what I want to say, Emily Proud, and I'm going to be an SEC homer for a second. Please excuse me. There's no Danny Cannell on set, so I can say this freely. I sat with Josh Pate at SEC Media Days, and we talked about how Mississippi State had potential to be the worst team in the SEC. They faced the winner of the Big 12 last year, a playoff team, and now all of a sudden everybody's surprised. They're like, well, Arizona State's ranked number 12. They've got Sam Leavitt. They've got Kenny Dillingham. They've got this great program that they're building. All I'm going to say to that is this is proof that the worst team in the Southeastern Conference of football still has the talent and the competence to play with any team from any conference in America. We have gotten so lost in the fact that there hasn't been an SEC team win a national championship since 2022. We got so caught up in the hype about watching Ohio State kick the lining out of Tennessee last year. Sorry, Proud, to your Vols. But at the end of the day, we're forgetting that the SEC is the conference where the best players still go to play. So this is just proof, as me being an SEC homer, you can be the bottom of the barrel in a conference, specifically the Southeastern Conference, and still have better players and still be able to put together a better game plan than the best team in other conferences. So all I'm going to say is, Proud, the SEC is not dead yet. That's all I'm here to say. That's all. I just wanted to get that off of my chest.
I don't know if anybody was saying that just because they're not winning national championships. Still some fantastic teams in the SEC, as evident over the weekend. They also had the best record among conferences playing other conferences. But that's what's fun about some of these early matchups, as we get to see these conferences battle it out for that conference pride. And that was on the line when SMU was upset at home against Baylor. So there is some positivity in the Big 12 in this conversation. Dame, what's their outlook for this season now for the Bears?
Well, Baylor looks good. I mean, they pulled out a very gutsy win on the road in a tough environment, and they did it when they had to play extra quarters, essentially, if you want to talk about overtime. Like, they did everything that they had to do in order to win. They ran the ball well. They threw the ball well. They just had a complete performance. Now, when I look at SMU, the problem with SMU, it's not the quarterback play. It's not the offense, but they need help on defense. I mean, You cannot beat anybody. If you're SMU, you cannot beat any team in America if you give up a 450-yard passer, who, by the way, threw for 4 touchdowns, a 115-yard rusher, who, by the way, had 2 rushing touchdowns, and an over 100-yard receiver, who also had 2 receiving touchdowns. You can't beat anybody like that. You can't beat a high school football team giving up those kind of numbers. And I think that that's SMU's problem. Offensively, with Rhett Lashlee, they always seem to be clicking on all cylinders, but the problem is they just can't outscore their opponents, which is unfathomable to think you're going to play a game where you score 45 points at home and still lose to an unranked team. That is a problem for SMU.
Yeah, not to beat the SEC drum again like Damien has done, but, I think Baylor was a little bit undervalued in this game coming in. I actually had Baylor as the favorite in this game and was not surprised by the win because Baylor did not play all that bad against Auburn in the season opener. Jackson Arnold just had a great second half and was able to win that game on the road. I think SMU is going to have opportunities to get back in the top 25 later this season, being in the ACC, but they do have to play Miami. They've got to play Clemson still, and I don't see them beating either of those 2 teams. As Damien mentioned, just gave up 400 yards passing to Sawyer Robertson, did not tackle well. They have to play unbeaten TCU in a few weeks. Josh Hoover's already carved up Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels in week 1. So this is a bowl team, but not a team that SMU has this season under Rhett Lashlee that's going to get back to Charlotte and play in the ACC final.
Yeah, not a lot of defense on either side. Baylor putting up over 600 yards of total offense. I know it went into overtime, but still, that is absolutely insane. A bit of lower scoring game later that night, Michigan at Oklahoma. The Sooners moving up to number 13 in the AP poll. But everyone's talking about that quarterback. Brad, how far can John Mateer take this Oklahoma team?
Pretty far, as long as he can stay healthy. He took way too many shots last night, and maybe that's by design because the way Oklahoma has this offense around him. Brent Venables brought in his OC, Ben Arbuckle from Washington State, but through 2 starts with Oklahoma, man, if you're a Sooners fan, you can't be any more excited about what this air raid guy has brought to Norman. Played really well last night, made a lot of play with his feet, but like I said, they've got to keep John Mateer upright. He can't take as many hits as he had last night against Michigan, especially with the meat of this SEC schedule coming up. But right now, I think Oklahoma, South Carolina, Ole Miss, those are kind of 3 teams outside of that elite tier at the top of the SEC that may have a playoff bid on the horizon, especially if Brent Venables can keep this team playing with as much momentum as they have right now.
And Damien, all the talk going into this game was how would Bryce Underwood fare on the road? True freshman, Brent Venables' defense loves to eat up those true freshman quarterbacks. But looking big picture at this Michigan team, how much is Underwood's maybe lack of experience going to hinder the Wolverines this season?
Well, Prad, I'm going to answer your question this way. It doesn't have to, because I understand that you're not getting a lot of production in the pass game at Michigan. That isn't just this year. This has been a bit of a problem in the recent years for the University of Michigan. And with Bryce Young being a young, inexperienced quarterback, you expect him to have roadblocks and bumps, and you don't expect him to come out and be a star, especially on the road, especially against the Brent Venables defense. But what I can tell you is to eliminate your struggles in the passing game, what should you do? Lean on your run game. Add a +1 in the run game. Let Bryce Underwood, let him use his legs, let him become another runner. Obviously, you've got Justice Hayes, the transfer from Alabama, who is playing at a very, very high level. But again, he can't win the game by himself. Passing game isn't going well. Let Bryce use his legs. Let him be effective as a runner first, and then you can start to get into the passing game. Then you can start to use play action. Then you can start to scheme up some concepts for receivers to be open. But right now, that's not the case. So you have to lean on the run game, when in reality, that's been Michigan's DNA for as long as I can remember. And your head coach is a former offensive lineman. I mean, that is the DNA for Michigan. That's what it needs to be. So going back to your question, Emily, to not let his inexperience be a hurdle throughout the rest of the season, do other things, scheme up ways to let him affect the game without using his arm, without putting too much pressure up here for him to see post-snap, pre-snap, read too many things. Lean on the run game. That's what Michigan has always been good at. And if you do that, you'll have a successful team this year.
Yeah, obviously a tough test against an SEC team on the road, which is something that Michigan doesn't do very often, but he's going to face some tough defenses in the Big Ten. So the more he plays, the more experience he will get. You got to listen to this podcast, guys. This is where you find all of the good, juicy information and what's happening across the sport of college football. We have so many great insiders here at CBS Sports, and they all come together to just unload the notebook. So make sure that you are listening to this show wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch on YouTube by scanning that QR code. Breaking news on CBS Sports HQ. It's out, the new AP Top 25 poll. We're seeing some movement in the top 10. So many upsets happening on yesterday's college football Saturday. So a lot of teams out of this poll, but new teams to the top 10. Illinois moving up a few spots. Florida State moving up 4 to be ranked 10th in the country. Seminole fans just rejoicing after their start to the season. But the fun part about having this poll is we get to decide where they went wrong. And that's why we have Damien Harris and Brad Crawford here to tell us, first off, who is a team that is ranked maybe too high in the poll? Brad, start us off.
Yeah, the South Carolina Gamecocks at number 11 for me. If you look beyond the box score, these first 2 wins for South Carolina over Virginia Tech and South Carolina State on Saturday night, and you watch the film, the Gamecocks are not a good football team up front right now. Didn't get their first down last night until midway through the second quarter. Last 2 games have scored 17 points each Saturday on offense. They had 38 last night, but 2 punt return touchdowns and a defensive score. So right now the Gamecocks are not in that midseason form that we expected to see out of Lenora Sellers and that first-year offensive coordinator Mike Shula. And then they've got Vanderbilt coming to town in week 3. Vanderbilt, as you know, Emily, pretty good team there in Tennessee, and they're unbeaten. Now, the Gamecocks have won 16 straight against the Commodores, but I do think this weekend's game will be very competitive and an awesome battle. So South Carolina's a team right now probably not deserving of a top 12 spot in the poll at number 11.
Yeah, I'm with Brad. I got to go with South Carolina at number 11. And, you know, as much as I sat here and pounded the table for the SEC, I have to acknowledge that, just like Brad said, this isn't a top 15 football team. This isn't a team that's better than Oklahoma to me right now. This is another team, just like Florida, that rode the hype off the end of their season last year and the hype of Lenora Sellers, obviously Dylan Stewart on the other side of the ball. But really outside of that, there are a lot of holes all over this team. I mean, I know they got a defensive touchdown last night, got a couple scores on special teams, but what remains for South Carolina is the fact that they have to play superhero ball with Lenora Sellers on offense, Dylan Stewart on defense, and they have to have those guys play at a level that covers up lacks or holes in other areas of their football team. And when you look at it, you know, Lenore Sellers still hasn't taken that next step as a true pocket passer. We know he's amazing with his legs, but until he does that and until they start to get more help from their surrounding players, their role players, I don't think this is a top 15, maybe even a top 20 football team right now.
So then, Brad, what do you think AP poll voters are seeing in this South Carolina team? Why are expectations that this is a fringe top 10 team in the country?
I think, as Damien mentioned, they've got 2 superstars who are potential first-team All-American candidates. The problem is Lenora Sellers has been sacked more than any quarterback in the SEC so far through 2 weeks, only has a couple touchdown passes. And against South Carolina State, an FCS opponent where the Gamecocks were a 42.5-point favorite, they did not bully South Carolina State up front. They lost the line of scrimmage battle. That's not a good sign, man, heading into SEC play with Vanderbilt, Missouri, and then Alabama, LSU the next 5 weeks, those 4 games. So Gamecocks are a team that they've got 4 and 5 stars at the line of scrimmage on offense, but they aren't blocking right now as a team that's deserving of a top 15 bid.
On the other side of things, let's put some respect on some of these teams. Damien, who is a team ranked too low in today's AP poll?
Man, I swear our audience might get tired of me today, but I'm staying in the SEC and I'm going with Oklahoma because, listen, first of all, when you've got a Brent Venables coach defense, they're always going to be good. They're always going to be stout in the interior. You're going to have good secondary play, but you're also going to be dealing with a scheme that is more complex than the average college football defensive game plan. And then you look at the other side of the ball, and John Mateer is a star at Oklahoma. He looks like he's next in line in the history of the great Oklahoma quarterbacks that are dual threat, can throw the ball well, can extend plays with their legs, can create opportunities downfield for the receivers to uncover themselves. I mean, this is about as complete of a football team as I've seen Oklahoma have as of recently in the past, 2-3 years, potentially, offense, defense included. But listen, Oklahoma, they've got a real shot right now. They might surprise some people in the SEC, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the college football playoffs this year.
Yeah, my team is ranked too low is the only G5 program that's inside the top 25, and it's USF. After back-to-back wins over ranked teams, no program in college football has done that so far. They bullied Boise State at the line of scrimmage 2 weeks ago, and then last night in the swamp, Florida lost to a team at home from the state of Florida for the first time since 1938. So Alice Golesh has got a lot to be happy about heading into week 3. Like I said previously, we thought this team would be like this in 2024, but Byron Brown got hurt and some other injuries up front. This is a team I think can follow the similar path to the playoff that Boise State had last year. The Broncos rode Ashton Jeanty. USF can ride Byron Brown. And coming up, regardless of that game against Miami next week, this is a team that is capable of double-digit wins. And right now at number 18, I think you're going to see USF break into that top 13, top 12 pace here in a couple weeks.
All right, so you gave us too high, too low, but overall, looking at this brand new top 25, Brad, where's your biggest gripe? Where'd the voters just get it totally wrong?
Florida State. I mean, on paper, Florida State was not a good team coming in. And what have they done the last 2 weeks? They embarrassed Alabama at Doak Campbell Stadium in the season opener, and then they scored on 10 consecutive offensive possessions against East A&M. And you know, Damien Harris would know about this too. After you win a big game and you come back home and can play in an opponent that you should potentially sleepwalk through, for Mike Norvell to get that team up and ready to play and for them to execute on all cylinders, that was very impressive to me. So I don't care who the opponent was in week 2 for the Noles. Scoring 77 points warrants a major jump in the polls. And right now the voters aren't giving Florida State the respect that they're giving Clemson and Miami.
Brad, well said. Very, very well said. Emily, you had actually, I got to tell you, I texted BMAC last night, and I told him, I was like, wait a minute, 77 points is crazy. And he texted me, he's like, well, we're playing a high school team. And I told him, it does not matter. Putting 77 points up on anybody, I don't care if you are playing a high school team, that is a daggone good day right there. So shout out to Florida State. Brad, that was an expert analysis. My biggest gripe with the polls right now, Emily, is I'm stepping out of the SEC finally.
Finally.
But Notre Dame, how in the world does Notre Dame lose week 1, have a bye week 2, don't play nobody, and then all of a sudden they jumped up a spot from their drop after the loss against Miami? And the people who are voting in these polls also know that after this game against Texas A&M, Notre Dame does not have another ranked opponent on their schedule right now. So with all of that being said, I would love to be inside of the AP polls' minds and try to figure out what exactly did you see from Notre Dame on a day when they didn't play a week after they lost to make them jump back in the poll.
It a really, really good practice. I'm hearing that out of South Bend.
They must have. Marcus Freeman must have gave a hell of a speech at practice.
It was fantastic. You don't even know. All right, guys. Thank you for that great analysis. And speaking of great analysis, the Cover 3 podcast crew, they blessed us with a nearly 2-hour episode following yesterday's action. So carve out some time, listen wherever you get your podcasts.